Hello and welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. A lot more to talk about than I realized we had to talk about today. But before we get into any of that, as always, my name is Kyle, and I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, the man who invented the word procrastination, my dad, Tim.
I don't think I invented it, but I am definitely listed next to it.
You look up procrastination in the dictionary, and it is your picture. You are the worst procrastinator in the history of the world.
Not the worst.
The worst. I asked for something 3 months ago.
Oh, we're not going to get into what you asked
and
for.
I asked you for it.
Did you get it?
Every week.
Did you get it?
No.
Yes, you did.
I have not gotten it yet.
Well, it's a work in progress.
Simple information is all I need.
It's not
simple information.
What you need is taking me hours of research to go back and try to find.
That will take you an afternoon because the information I had to provide
was simple.
Was an afternoon.
Yeah, and I had given it all to you. You had it in a folder. I have to go back through computer file after computer file. Let's not get into it now.
We're going to save that for later on in the show, and you will agree with me later on in the show
if one
that
of your
he is the world's worst procrastinator.
Put in the link who you feel is the worst procrastinator of all time.
The link, you mean the comments?
That too.
And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it.
I am
so upset with you.
I don't care. This is a great day for me.
See, this is where I need you to be a procrastinator because we don't need to talk about this.
We absolutely need to talk about this. So this weekend was a great weekend. As you guys have seen for month after month, he likes Ohio State. I love Bucky. And this weekend in the women's NCAA hockey championship.
So anyways, did you hear?
Bucky comes through, wins their 7th national championship. Ohio State does what they need to do, and that's lose. Loser.
You didn't even watch the game, okay? I actually watched the game.
I actually turned it on late because I screwed up the time zone problem.
You turned it on with 3 minutes left after I texted you saying, "Are you watching this?"
And it's like, oh crap! But 1-0 game.
It was a 1-0 game. Wisconsin scores early
in the first period and then locks them down. Bob Johnson learned a lot from the 1980. I said Mark Johnson.
You said Bob. Bob was
his dad. Mark Johnson learned a lot from his dad, but also from Herb Brooks in the 1980 Olympics.
If you ever want to see what the 1980 Olympics felt like, if you weren't there, which I wasn't because I'm not, old. Despite what my kids are starting to tell me, I'm not old, okay? I'm not old.
Welcome to my world.
But if you want to see what that was like, the last 10 minutes of that national championship game was crazy.
It was.
So it was 1-0. Ohio State, and kudos to Wisconsin. Wisconsin got into that tournament at the very last second. They had lost 5 in a row in January. Ohio State was national championships last year in women's hockey. We're the number 1 team in the nation coming into the Frozen Four tournament. Wisconsin beat the number 3 team in the country in the quarters, the number 2 team in the country in the semis,
in the overtime,
and the number 1 in overtime versus Minnesota, and the number 1 overall team in the country for the national championship. I mean, that is an unbelievable run, and good for them, but screw you.
So this reminds me,
a Wisconsin fan.
When I was in high school, the Badger men's hockey team got into the championship, and they were known as the backdoor Badgers because they just barely got in the tournament.
Right.
This felt like that. Their last team in, weren't expected to even go.
Nope.
Johnson puts them on a run.
Now, for those of you that don't know who Mark Johnson is, number 1, shame on you.
Yes.
Number 2, he was the star of that 1980s Olympic team. Just coming out. How many national championships did he win in Wisconsin before going to the Olympics?
1 or 2, and I think he was the leading scorer for the United States for that tournament.
He 100% was.
Yeah.
100% was. Had a goal in the, it was not the gold medal game. I think he had one in the gold medal game too.
He had one against Russia.
But he had one against Russia. Scored several in that 1980 tournament where Herb Cole pulled off the miracle of all miracles, even getting past the USSR.
Nobody thought that would ever happen.
Who do they beat in the gold medal?
Sweden.
Was it Sweden?
Sweden on a Sunday morning where nobody went to church that day.
No, nobody remembers because beating the USSR was such a big deal.
Well, it was college kids against pros.
It was, but man, watching the Badgers women, Ohio State couldn't get a shot off.
No.
They couldn't get a play off. They couldn't do anything. As soon as they moved that puck, there were 3 Wisconsin. I don't know how they did it because any player that had that puck, there were 2 or 3 Wisconsin Badgers on at all time. It was just all defenders out there. The puck moves, there's 3. The puck moves again, there's 3 again. It was the best hockey defense I have ever seen. I don't know. I also don't watch a lot of hockey. So
that being said, women's
amazing though.
Women's hockey. We don't talk women's sport a whole lot, but women's hockey in the Midwest is huge.
It's a big deal.
It's
and a lot in part to Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Which is a shame because I think what Mark Johnson did for women hockey, Kobe would have done for women's basketball. And so it's a shame that he passed away in such a tragic way for a lot of reasons, but that one as well. But Mark Johnson really created women's hockey in college.
Well, and it's interesting because I don't know that there's ever been a father and son combination like Bob Johnson with the men's hockey and Mark Johnson on the women's hockey. No. Both have dynasties.
They do.
And both are legends in Madison. So.
Record 7th national championship. I think it is an NCAA hockey record. I don't think it's just the women's record. I think it's the NCAA hockey record for most national championships.
We won't go
again. Ohio State, man, I was rooting for you. But Wisconsin earned that.
Through. Way to go, Bucky. Ohio
State had no answers.
It was the most defense. Ohio State looked gassed by the end because like you said, every time they touched the puck, Wisconsin just swarmed.
Wisconsin wanted them more. Ohio State just came off a national championship. It is hard to repeat. They were almost there. Wisconsin just wanted that more. And it was clear from the moment the puck dropped.
It was a great weekend.
And I have heard about it.
Yes.
What? By the way, I don't mind hearing about it at all. I do have a problem hearing about it from a guy who watched the last 3 minutes of the game.
Because I forgot it was on.
I watched that from puck drop to final buzzer.
You didn't tell me it was on. I didn't get a text. By the way, you're watching the game? Oh, crap.
I didn't want you watching the game for a while because it wasn't fun for me to watch. They couldn't.
You hid it from me.
It was they were the best offensive hockey team in the nation, and they could not get a shot off. It was
United States versus USSR.
Don't you dare.
It was shut down.
Ohio State
defensive hockey
is heroes.
Bucky wins. Go Bucky.
Bucky did win. Congratulations, Badgers hockey team. Congratulations, Ohio State women's hockey team for making it that far and being the #1 team in the nation 2 years in a row. But screw you for talking about it nonstop when you didn't even watch the damn game.
It was awesome. I watched all the highlights at this point. It was awesome.
Big Ten versus Big Ten, not Big Ten in women's hockey or in men's hockey. They're in a different
WCHA versus whatever.
Correct. Yeah, they're in that conference together. Big Ten's not quite big enough hockey-wise to have all the teams there. But speaking of Big Ten anyways, there's a news report that came out. It was on Yahoo Sports talking about how the Big Ten didn't want UCLA.
No, they wanted USC and Oregon.
But USC wouldn't.
Or is it Oregon?
Oregon.
Okay.
Oregon's the state. Oregon is the town in Wisconsin.
For those who don't know, Wisconsin says cities really strangely. Like R-I-O in the entire world is Rio. In Wisconsin is Rio.
It is Rio.
And most of the world, B-E-R-L-I-N is Berlin.
Well, there's a reason for that, though.
Berlin.
There's a reason it's Berlin in Wisconsin. Did you know this?
Obviously not.
Because it was Berlin and New Berlin, because it's a very German state here.
Very German.
During World War II,
they changed
the pronunciation.
I can understand that.
Yes. So in World War II, I can't talk today. World War II is the reason that the pronunciation changed from Berlin to Berlin.
I just thought it was another Wisconsin messed up.
There's a lot of weird ones. There's Oconomowoc. There's
Oconomowoc, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's Wausau, which is Wasu. It looks like
there's the only Wanakee in the world in Wisconsin.
Only Wanakee. It is a lot of very long, drawn out names. But yes, there's a reason on that one.
And we aren't even getting into the Native American names in
Well, I mean,
States.
considering the 3 towns we just named were American.
I'm talking
Native
like
American names.
Ashwaubenon, Shawano,
Sheboygan.
Milwaukee, all. Anyways,
There's a lot of them.
okay.
A lot of Native
enough
American pride
geography
up here.
talk for the
But
day.
anyways, back to the Big Ten.
Yes.
So the Big Ten didn't want UCLA.
No, they wanted Oregon and they wanted USC, and that was it.
And USC would not leave without UCLA being a part
Good for
of it.
them. That's their natural rival.
It's going to be a struggle for UCLA, though. They do not draw, and that is not something you see in the Big Ten. UCLA is going to struggle if they don't start getting their own crowds because, trust me, Big Ten fans are going to travel to LA, and it is going to be it's going to be what it is in Jacksonville when the Packers come to town. It's going to be 90% Big Ten
Absolutely.
fans. UCLA will not have a home game anymore.
Or they'll turn it around. Now, the next 2 teams, and let me ask you this because the Big Ten still wants Oregon. They want them desperately.
They do.
But
And Oregon wants to come to the Big Ten.
Yes. Yeah, so they've got to find that other partner. Everybody in the world knows it should be Notre Dame. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen at this point. What would you say if it was Colorado and bring Coach Prime into the Big Ten?
You know I'm a Coach Prime fan. As soon as Deion was mentioned as the Colorado coach, I bought a Coach Prime sweatshirt.
You did.
I've worn it on this show. Deion Sanders was one of the guys I watched religiously on Sundays when I was a kid. If the Packers weren't on, I was watching the Cowboys. I was watching the Niners. I was even watching the Ravens when he went there for a year. Deion through and through. Loved watching him. You would point him out on the field and say, you want to see something amazing? Watch Deion. Nobody's getting the ball.
And I'd also put on the baseball games because even though people forget, he was an outstanding baseball player.
He's an outstanding base runner.
And fielder.
All he had to do,
and he get on base.
And he get on base.
So he was an outstanding baseball player to play at that level, and it's frustrated him because he could never master baseball.
I still hate Bobby Cox.
For good reason.
For him not putting him in that
He
game.
should have been.
You cost yourself a World Series.
Yeah. Just ego.
You completely cost yourself a World Series by not putting Deion in.
But anyways,
it's unacceptable.
Getting back to the Big Ten, squirrel.
Lots of squirrels.
Lots of squirrels today. I know they want Oregon. They want Notre Dame, naturally. I don't know that happens. Do you think Colorado in a long-term scenario would be a good fit?
Colorado, I thought, has always been a good fit. They're a Midwestern school. Colorado has a very Midwestern feel. I think they'd fit really well. I think Colorado State would as well.
I don't think you're going to get both.
Well, here's the thing, though. If I'm expanding with Oregon, I have 2 schools I'm choosing from to bring them in. One being Washington.
True.
But that's not the school I want. I want Stanford.
You've said that before.
Stanford, and here's a reason, and especially if the Big Ten wants to bring Notre Dame in, Stanford is a natural rival of Notre Dame. USC is a natural rival of Notre Dame and has been for decades. Stanford comes in and puts more pressure on Notre Dame to be in the Big Ten, and especially if you as the Big Ten start putting pressure on Notre Dame and telling them you are not going to play these schools anymore unless you are in our conference. Now, the Big Ten will never do that because Notre Dame's a huge draw and there's a lot of money in that. But if you all of a sudden say, you're not playing Stanford anymore, you're not playing USC anymore, these are Big Ten schools, you want to play these schools, you come to the Big Ten.
Well, and the difference, I think something's changed in that dynamic because the Big Ten used to be on par with how big Notre Dame was, TV-wise.
Correct.
Big Ten is exponentially larger network-wise than the Notre Dame can ever be at this point.
They're going to get a $50 million per year per school contract. Notre Dame right now has a $30 million a year contract with NBC.
And it's going to grow. Now that you bring in, you've got the LA market.
Yep. Well, that's with the LA market. That's a projection with the LA market because they're making 30 right now, which is on par with Notre Dame. I think a couple million more. But it's going to jump $20 million. You start bringing in Oregon and Stanford, it's going to jump even more.
I'm not sure.
Why don't you think Stanford is the perfect fit?
It depends on how big they want the league to get. If you want the Big Ten to go to 20 teams, fine. If you're only going to take them to 16, maybe 18, I want Oregon and Notre Dame. That's my first 2 choices.
Secondarily, Notre Dame forever.
Secondarily, if Notre Dame doesn't want to come at this point in history, I'm taking Colorado. I want Coach Prime in the Big Ten.
Colorado hasn't won a single game yet.
I understand. It's Coach Prime.
I understand that, but they just came off a 1 in whatever season. They won 1 game.
Sure. I'll still take Coach Prime with a 1 in whatever team.
Trust me. I'm a huge Coach Prime fan. You know that. I am not taking Colorado over Stanford because Stanford also brings a lot more that Colorado doesn't.
What?
They bring in
a medical school.
Okay, it is one of the best universities in the United States.
It is one of the best.
It does bring in that.
Academically, it's one of the best.
But you're bringing in a football team. You're bringing in a women's basketball team that is constantly competing for national championships. You're bringing in a volleyball team that constantly competes.
You're going to bring in
a
tennis.
Track and field and tennis that constantly compete. You're going to bring in a lot more sports. Swimming, Stanford swimming is top notch with UCLA.
For whatever reason, and you may be exactly right, but for whatever reason, Stanford just doesn't seem to fit. It's not a state school. It's like Northwestern.
How many pine trees are in the Midwest? Their mascot is a pine tree.
Yeah, it's one of the dumbest mascots on. Maybe that's what bugs me. It should be the Stanford Cardinal, which it always was. Why'd you get rid of a bird for a tree?
Yeah, I don't know. It's California, man. Yeah. I don't question what happens to California.
Exactly. We've got the land of the fruit and nuts.
I mean, why is the Bruin a bear? I don't get that either.
Well, they had bears there at one time, right?
They still have bears there. Northern California has a lot of bears.
Why is the USC called the Trojans? I don't understand. They've
sponsorship.
Stop. I knew you'd go there. No,
it's the same logo.
It's the Trojan War. They picked that warrior.
They did, and the Trojan is their mascot. I'm just saying, you're the Cardinal. It's a tree. Cardinals live in trees.
Yes,
I don't know if you were aware of that.
I wonder.
Cardinals live in trees.
My question is, Stanford aware of that?
I'm going to assume that's some of the smartest people in the world. I'm assuming they figured it out.
All evidence to the contrary. You had a cardinal. It was a nice mascot. It wasn't nothing politically incorrect about a little bird.
Apparently there was.
Apparently so.
Now it's a tree. Tree brings life. Tree brings oxygen. They absorb the carbon dioxide.
Keep selling. I ain't buying. Give me Coach Prime all day long.
Trust me, I want them all. And this expansion is not going to stop. So the question becomes the SEC and the Big Ten have proven they're going to be the last to stand, right? And so who is the next expansion for the SEC? Because we keep talking out west for the Big Ten, and that's where the Big Ten's focus is more out west and the northern side, especially of out west.
I could see the Big Ten going to the southeast to try to grab a couple schools.
Miami and Florida State are there.
Right.
They're ACC, and those contracts are going to be impossible to get out of right now, but eventually the money's going to be there where it's going to make sense.
Somebody's going to break it.
Somebody's going to break it. And if I'm the Big Ten, yeah, I want Miami and Florida State. Miami makes sense. Honestly, Florida State's going to the SEC. Once that breaks, Florida State's going to the SEC.
Clemson
That's
makes
going
sense.
to happen. Clemson, you just got me there, especially again, we're talking Notre Dame. Clemson and Miami make perfect sense for the Big Ten. You get that Florida market. Recruiting is going to be a lot better when it comes to the Big Ten in Florida, which honestly, let's be honest, that's why you got those California schools.
Yeah.
Because you can all of a sudden reach those recruits. And it also gives SC the chance to reach out to Ohio and
Michigan and
Ohio.
Would you stop
because
with the Ohio?
That's really all the big recruits in the Midwest come from Ohio. Come on, let's be honest here.
What the Big Ten is doing, and if they would pull in a Florida school, they're landlocking the SEC because the SEC is really still a Southeast Conference. Yes, they're getting Texas and Oklahoma, but they don't go any farther west, and I don't know that they'd go to Arizona to try to get them.
I don't know. I mean, they're not going to bring a lot football-wise.
No.
And that's what the SEC, that's what this is all about. Like, let's be honest, it's about football. That's where all these expansions are coming from. You want their football teams. That's all anybody talks about. The SEC, if I am in the SEC right now, and I see what the Big Ten is doing, especially with them focused on the West right now, you have to nab Florida State and Miami. You have to. Because the Big Ten proved they're willing to spend the money to get any of these schools.
Well, and if they're willing to spend it, if they're willing to support the schools and go, look, yeah, you got to break the contract. We got your back.
Right.
Which I think the Big Ten would do.
Right.
You get Miami and Clemson in the Big Ten, you've got your first national conference.
You do.
Truly
Duke
national.
and North Carolina are going to be out there at some point. If the SEC starts to break, who knows where they're going to go. They're going to obviously go together.
SEC is going to survive. It's going to be the Big Ten versus the SEC.
Of course is going to survive.
It's the Big Ten versus the SEC. It's the way it's shaping now with the Big 12 picking up everything else.
Correct.
I still think the days of the NCAA are numbered.
I do too. You'll see the Big 10, Big 12, and SEC break off and form their own, which I think is where the end of the ACC comes into play, because I don't think they'll bring them with. I really don't.
I'm not sure they will. And the other thing that would bring, hopefully, it would be a realigning of what we've talked about before, the debacle that's turning into the NIL. It's turning into such a recruiting
There was a question
tool.
I heard that was asked, and it was an interesting question. Why are these NIL deals not announced to the world? Because we know what players' contracts are in the NFL. We know what coaches' contracts are, especially with state schools and colleges. You have to announce that, right?
So why don't the NIL deals have to be announced in a state school? Because the boosters are the ones providing it. And the boosters want to stay in the background and write the checks and play dirty.
In reality, though, these players are, let's call it what it is, they're employed, right, by these state schools.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are getting paid, in reality, this should be announced what they're being paid as quote unquote state employees.
But it's not, because they're being very cagey about it, and they're hiding these dollar amounts. You don't see Arch Manning's deal being announced. Massive deal, obviously. And some of the other ones. I've said it before and I'll say it again. NIL should not be allowed for any freshman.
It should not be a recruiting tool.
It's not a recruiting tool. It should not be a transfer portal tool. They have to fix the transfer portal.
It's free agency. We've talked about it before.
Yes.
It's not NCAA transfer portal. It's NCAA free agency.
And I've always thought, if you're recruited to go to a school and the coach leaves, then you should be allowed to leave.
Correct.
There's still, if you're recruited and that school is giving you an education, giving you an NIL deal at some point.
But are they giving an education?
Well, you've got to go to
them a
class.
degree.
You have to go to class and earn it. They're giving you the opportunity, and that's all anybody gets.
And most of these guys do.
Yes.
This isn't saying it happens with everybody. 99% of these guys do, but there are players out there that you talk about, these one and done guys in basketball.
Sure.
Dude, these guys aren't going to class, because by the time they be flunked out of school and it becomes a problem, they're already off being drafted. They don't care.
That's basketball. You don't see one and done in football. You've got to go for at least a couple years.
Correct. Well, the only guy big enough to be a one and done was Jadeveon Clowney.
Yes.
Like, he could have went after his freshman year. Dude was a monster.
But not many guys that are 18, 19 years old can compete on the NFL level. Their bodies just aren't big enough yet.
There's a lot of these guys that are in their 20s getting drafted that aren't big enough to compete at the NFL level. We talked about, there's a cornerback coming out that's 166 pounds. How the hell are you going to compete at 166 pounds? I get he's a corner and I get his job isn't meant to tackle. It's meant to be a speed guy. But dude's going to get rocked.
Not to mention Bryce Young.
Bryce Young is going to fall. That is my prediction here on Sports Talk with Dad. And you tell me why you disagree in the comments below. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. Bryce Young may not end up being a first-round pick. If he does not go with that first overall pick,
which I don't see how that could happen.
What was that?
Caught myself strange. I don't see how that can happen. You don't draft a 5, 10, 11 guy, 190 pounds soaking wet to be your face of your franchise. CJ Stroud has to be the number one pick.
CJ Stroud's the number one pick. He fits that offense that Frank Reich wants to run so well. The kid's as polished gets. He's smart. He showed he understands strategy with Ohio State, running the Ryan. Well, I guess it wasn't Ryan Day's offense, but running the offense at Ohio State. He's proven time and time again that he's more polished than Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was polished coming out of college.
CJ Stroud just looks like an NFL quarterback already. And like you said, smart kid.
Very smart.
I want that kid to be the face of my franchise.
He is a prototypical quarterback. And that's one thing I think you've seen a lot with these top guys going, is that they're athletes, right? And I think that's what Bryce Young is. Bryce Young is one of the best athletes on the planet.
Is he another Kyler Murray? I don't think he's a head case like Kyler Murray at all.
No, and you don't play for Nick Saban and be a head case.
But athletically, that's kind of this prototype.
Kyler Murray's a perfect example. He was drafted number 1 overall as an athlete. He wasn't. He's one of the best athletes on the planet. Look what he did. I mean, he's a number 9 overall pick in baseball and the number 1 overall pick in football, and it's proof right there why you don't draft short athletes. They're not there to play quarterback.
Unless you're Doug Flutie.
Doug Flutie's a different story.
He was a freak of nature. But
Doug Flutie's a different story. But you have a person in C.J. Stroud who has the build of a quarterback. He has the brain of a quarterback. He is one of the best passers I've seen at Ohio State in a long time.
In a series of great quarterbacks at Ohio State, and I hate you for it.
It's great. Yeah, don't forget, we got rid of Joe Burrow because we were too stacked at quarterback. Wisconsin doesn't have that problem.
Yet.
Ever.
So, okay, and I'm only doing this because we're talking NFL quarterbacks. Let's get it out of the way. We talk about it every program.
I don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers anymore.
Aaron Rodgers, the deal still isn't done.
He's still a member of the Green Bay Packers.
I am praying again. I admit this, and I'm sorry, Jets fans, and we're going to appear on a Jets podcast coming up. They want to hear from the Packers perspective. But here's my question. And I don't want him to go. I've said that before. I really don't want him to go now. I want him to show up on family night just for the drama of it because it would be amazing. It'd be worse
That's
now.
What Favre did. Mark Tauscher, who's a former offensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers, does a local show here in Milwaukee. And I guess Madison, Milwaukee. And he was talking about what it was like when Favre came in.
Mm-hmm.
He said you could have heard a pin drop when he walked in that locker room. Now, I don't think it'll be the same response as Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers isn't doing anything to hold this up. He's just sitting back.
Correct.
Where Brett Favre retired, decided on the day before family night that he was coming back, and then all of a sudden showed up in the locker room in Green Bay. That was just a dick move. Like, that was just Favre
again
trying to pull one over on the Packers. He didn't want to be there anymore. Rodgers still wants to be a Green Bay Packer. Now, not so much anymore. He wants to go on and be a New York Jet and hopefully not wear number 12. But it's not going to be that same situation. This is all on the Packers brass at this point, refusing to pull the trigger because they want that 13.
They want 13. They want players coming back. They've shot off their mouths to the point where I don't know that they can get anything back for them.
Yeah, now the president, Mark Murphy, is saying, I'm not saying anything. This is a secret I'm not going to tell. Too late.
The guy needs, I'm sorry. Mark's made us a lot of money, but he has sabotaged so much things. It's time for him to go.
Well, it's the same thing, well, actually not the same thing Favre ran into because nobody's there when Rodgers was drafted. They're all gone. Bob Harlan is gone. Ted Thompson is gone. God rest his soul. All the scouts are gone, except I think Rodgers said one is still there. Like, they're all gone. There's nobody there that has his back anymore that drafted him. They're ready to move on and build their own legacy. And it's all ego-driven. And I get why the Packers want that 13th overall pick. I really do.
So do I.
Because they're not going to be a 13th pick next year. They're going to be the 32nd pick next year.
Who is?
The Jets.
Oh, the Jets are, yeah.
The Jets have the third. I did not. I pulled a U. And
you did a me because I'm going. The Packers are going to be 32 next year. I don't think so.
No, they are going to have. The Jets are going to have the 32nd pick, or at least they'll be late 20s.
Late 20s.
They're not going to have the 13th overall pick, so I get why the Packers want that, but the Jets aren't willing to give that up. Here's what I'm waiting to see: the Rams are shopping Matt Stafford
big time. They were upset he wasn't part of the clearinghouse at the beginning of the year.
What if
I love it?
The Jets pull the trigger and trade for Matt Stafford?
I think the fan base would lose their mind.
What would the Packers do then? Because you're not bringing in Matt Stafford to be a backup quarterback.
You're screwed. You are officially, the pooch has been screwed at that point.
Packers see Baker Mayfield is gone to Tampa.
There's nobody else. Nowhere
they
to
see
go.
All these other players going different places. They think they're the only team in town. Jimmy Garoppolo's gone to Vegas. But Matt Stafford is still out there, and the Rams just started to openly shop.
And if I'm the Jets, to get that leverage, I'm looking at Gutekunst going, you know what? We're good. We're going to go and get Stafford.
What do you do if you're Goody in that situation? You all of a sudden just went from getting a first-round pick to getting a third-round pick.
Or less. because then you just got to dump him wherever you can dump him. And don't forget, there's one other. If I'm the Jets, I'm not looking at Stafford either. I'm going and getting Lamar Jackson.
There's collusion going on with Lamar Jackson.
I know there's
more to that story. You want to talk about NFL owners working against a player? That's exactly what's happening.
Lamar Jackson's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in football, or his top 5 to 7, 8. He's one of the best. And if I'm the Jets, Lamar Jackson takes care of my team for the next several years, not just the next 1 or 2.
But Rodgers gives you the best chance to win.
Does he?
He does.
Really? How do you do that? How many championship games was he in a row, and how did we end up in both those games?
So one of them was a fluke against Seattle. That was special teams.
That was
Minnesota.
Okay. That was long ago. I'm talking in
the rest were bad
ears.
coaching.
Yes. Well, bad coaching and bad decisions by Rodgers. When they played Tampa, that was as much on Rodgers as it was on LaFleur.
3-and-out after 3 interceptions.
No.
But I blame it more on play calling. I really do. Am I biased? Yeah.
We love Aaron Rodgers.
But, I mean, I just can really see the Jets pulling the trigger on Matt Stafford. And if the Jets pull the trigger on Matt Stafford, the Packers are screwed.
There's no place to... where are you going to send them? Maybe
San Francisco?
Maybe. You're not going to get anything from
Miami seems pretty set with Tua.
And you talk about ego. San Francisco goes from offering 4 number 1s for Rodgers to now being able to get him for a 4th-round pick.
Correct.
Oh, my God. LaFleur would lose his mind. And by the way, to show you how dysfunctional Green Bay is, Gutekunst goes to Indianapolis
without his head coach.
Without the head coach. To just say to the world, I don't care. I don't give a shit.
I don't think LaFleur is really happy about this whole situation, and I don't think Gutekunst gives 2 shits about it.
I don't either. That organization is the most siloed and dysfunctional organization I think I've ever seen right now.
This is pretty bad. I haven't seen dysfunction like this in Green Bay, I don't think, in my lifetime.
Not in your lifetime. It's been back to, for me, I saw when the board had to approve trades and they approved that disastrous John Hadl trade back in the 70s. Yes, I remember.
5 first-round picks for a quarterback that was
10 years past his prime.
It would have been like trading for Tom Brady right now. I lied. It would have been like
much
trading
worse than
for
that.
Peyton Manning after he won the Super Bowl with the Broncos.
In that league. It's
and John Hadl was never a quarterback of those calibers.
He was not even in their league. Yes, he won an AFL championship back in the early 60s.
Right.
That was in 76. I mean,
if Gutekunst isn't careful, he's going to get that same Dan Devine treatment. Hopefully the dogs get left out of it this time, because that's not acceptable.
No, it's not.
But he's going to be run out of town on a rail. I mean, I don't know what cards he thinks he has to play here, because with the rumor that Matt Stafford's on the block now, if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I take that offer and accept whatever they have. The problem is that the Jets are going to come back and say their offer is dropped. And if the Jets make the move for Matt Stafford, because here's the thing, if he comes back to Green Bay and you have no trade partners, you're not letting $50 million sit on your bench.
Really?
There's no way. There would be riots in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is your backup quarterback.
They could show Rodgers cleaning the equipment room. They could show Rodgers making the lunches.
And Rodgers would
players.
sit there.
In a minute.
Rodgers would sit there and wait for something to happen to Love, and you want to see a new level of greatness.
Rodgers needs a chip on his shoulder for greatness to come out, and he's got it now in spades.
Just start stacking.
Yes, and if the Jets trade for Stafford, don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, I would love it if it did. Can you imagine him coming back to Green Bay, playing behind Love, and then Love goes down in the 4th game of the year? Oh, my God.
There's no way Rodgers plays behind Love. You can't do that. There was no way Rodgers was going to play ahead of Favre. It wasn't going to happen.
And as much as I want Jordan Love to succeed, and I do, the pressure that's being put on that kid is so unfair.
I want to know what's going on. One, Jordan Love has earned my respect more than ever with this situation. He hasn't said a word about any of this. is.
No, he's a class act.
He is being a very class act individual. And I think he really likes Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers treated him very well in situations where he didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And good for Aaron Rodgers for being a really good person and never saying a bad word, only saying great things about Jordan Love. And Jordan Love hasn't forgotten that. And so he's never going to say anything bad about Rodgers. But he's in a situation where he can't say anything bad about the executives that are trying to give him a shot now either.
Right.
So good for him for not saying anything. But what is going through his mind right now? Like, he's still on the team. This isn't your team yet. This is still Aaron Rodgers' team.
I'll tell you what's going through his mind. He's flown out Aaron Jones. He's brought Christian Watson. He's bringing Romeo Doubs. They're all working out together. Something Rodgers hasn't done, and I give Love all the credit in the world for saying, let's get together and let's start putting this thing together on our own.
Right. He's going to work hard. I like Jordan Love, and I do think he is the next Packer Hall of Famer. I'd like him to be that.
I would love him to be that.
I love him as a person. I want to love him as a player. I want him to be in McDonald's commercials because that would make my day, and McDonald's can pay me for that idea later on because I've been pitching that for a while, McDonald's. Don't you forget.
It's been pathetic to have to listen to from my end. So, enough of that. There's a reason I wasn't watching the women's hockey championship where Wisconsin beat Ohio State like a drum.
No, they didn't.
Destroyed them.
They won by one goal.
Destroyed them.
And then played some of the best defense I've ever seen on an ice rink.
They destroyed them.
They did not destroy Ohio State.
Wisconsin
They came in with a plan and played that game well. They won by one shot.
Wisconsin outcoached them. They outplayed them.
Shot.
They crushed Ohio State.
They were outcoached.
And
they were not outplayed.
They outplayed them.
They did.
They crushed them. I loved it. But I was watching.
Not what happened. You didn't even watch the game.
I was watching the NCAA tournament.
I want you to admit again that you didn't watch the game.
Not until you told me to turn it on because I forgot.
Because
I was watching the basketball tournament.
Yes.
I'm not usually into the tournament.
I have no Final Four teams left. They were all knocked out. You want to talk about Big Ten, by the way?
Ooh.
There were, 7 or 8 Big Ten schools?
There aren't any left.
After the second round, there were no Big Ten schools left. All gone.
Michigan
the one
State.
seed was knocked out in the first
Michigan
round.
State's still there.
That's true. Michigan State did make it.
As always, they're carrying the banner of the Big Ten.
Yes. You watch Michigan State go on a run in this.
They could.
They are looking great.
They could run to the Final Four right now.
Very easily.
They've got the best coach in basketball.
You got nobody left. You have 2 1s in Alabama and Houston. Mm-hmm. And Houston looks very beatable. Alabama really hasn't played anybody yet.
They played Maryland close for 3 quarters.
And then just ran.
Right. They ran them out of the gym.
Maryland was not on their level in the fourth quarter. It just didn't happen. Houston looked very beatable for all of that game.
Virginia got beat. Another number 1 went down to a 16.
Purdue.
FDU. Purdue went down. So it's been an exciting tournament. I like these kind of upsets.
It's still going to be the best teams going on. Now that we're in the Sweet 16, this is where the 2 and the 3s and the 1s start to run away.
I'm still holding out hope for that miracle run by a Providence or
Providence looks good. Who are they facing right now? Let me pull up my bracket.
You always do this. Right in the middle of the show. It's called preparation. You're supposed to have that ready. I'll talk about Wisconsin versus Ohio State.
I don't want to hear about not doing what they're supposed to do at the time that they're supposed to do it.
I have been doing it.
So Alabama's got San Diego State. That should be a decent game. I think Alabama's going to run away from that. Creighton and Princeton. Princeton could beat Creighton.
They could. Princeton was the one I said Providence. I meant Princeton.
Princeton could do it. You got FAU and Tennessee. Tennessee's going to win that game going away. You got Kansas State and Michigan State. That's going to be a really good game. Kansas State is an unbelievable basketball program, and so is Michigan State.
I'm still hoping for Michigan State, and they're going to come down to coaching because Izzo is, if not the best, he's in the top 4 in the country. He's a Mount Rushmore guy.
Going to take that game. You got Houston and Miami. Houston could lose that game. I think it'll be close, but Houston wins in the end. You got Xavier in Texas. That's going to be a good game.
Did you say Xavier? It's Xavier. It's not Xavier.
Professor X.
It's Xavier.
Then don't put an X there and put a Z. It's Xavier.
X sounds like Z.
No, X sounds like X.
Xavier is playing Texas.
Okay.
And Texas is going to win.
UConn's going to beat Arkansas, and then you have Gonzaga and UCLA. So really, you have a 2-3, you have a 4, you have another 2-3, you have a 1 and a 5. I mean, these big schools are starting to show up, and that's.
I'm hoping FAU and Princeton.
Princeton could win. They're playing a 6. I mean, Creighton's always that team that's kind of in the mix, and this is a chance for them to run. Princeton hasn't seen talent like this before, though. Like they've faced some very talented teams that they caught off guard. You're not going to catch Creighton off guard in this one. They know they're getting ready for you and know they got to beat you.
Well, if I'm betting, I've already lost. I was done very early.
I have no Final Four teams left.
So they're going to have to reset the brackets. It'll be a fun weekend to bet these games.
It will. It will. Princeton's going to have a lot of money on them. Don't get me wrong. Princeton's the big money grabber right now in Vegas currently, and they're going to continue to be. I mean, obviously, they're a bunch of smart guys, right?
They are.
That's the school you want to go to. At least that's what I hear. I was not invited there.
No.
They're gonna make a run. I don't think they beat Creighton though. I really don't. And if they face Alabama,
no, they're
come
done.
on.
So did you see the other news that came out yesterday?
Which one?
Rick Pitino is changing jobs.
St. John's. Did you hear the news that came with Rick Pitino being hired by St. John's?
He's going to try to bring St. John's back to the glory it was when...
He is, and he's going to do a good job bringing that program back. He's a good coach and really got railroaded out of Louisville for doing something that everybody else was doing at that time. He was just the biggest name doing it, so that's what they went after. The former coach is suing the school. Mike Anderson was fired, and the issue is they're saying he was fired for cause, listing not building a program suited for... What was it? Hold on, let me find the exact thing here. Not building a program suited for student athletes. Not building a program suited for assistant coaches, and just went off on a bunch of different
They're going to lose it.
He is
that was already
suing
done.
St. John's now for $11 million because that was it. And any coach that's ever sued a university for being fired for cause has won. Like, the coach always wins. Just pay the dude $11 million. Admit that you wanted to move on to Rick Pitino because you were clearly talking to him before he was ever fired. Just pay him the money and move on.
Yeah.
Don't sign a contract for somebody if you're not going to pay it out. That's how it goes. Now, if something terrible happens, right, that's a different ballgame. He clearly was fired for having a bad record and not winning ball games. Write in the contract if you say you have to have a certain record in order to earn this money.
Now, you got to pay him out. That would have been like, I don't know, Wisconsin not paying out Paul Chris because he didn't win enough games. You just don't do that. It's big-time sports.
They'll negotiate this and make it happen and go through all that. But you told the guy he was going to make this amount of money. It was all guaranteed contract, right? You got to pay him out. You're going to lose. But St. John's is going to be a dangerous team now with Rick Pitino being there. He's going to recruit better. I remember St. John's being really good.
They were really good.
I grew up at the end of the St. John's era, really, because the 80s and 90s is when they were really great. They were good in the 2000s, then kind of faded away.
I can see the coach of St. John's during that period of time.
His name's Rick Pitino.
No. Back in the day when they had a different name, and they were Final Four team. They were one of those city teams that were just outstanding.
They were good. So they got the recruits. They brought in the right guys. They had a good coach.
Yeah,
and they made it work. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that lawsuit. I think the precedent's already been set.
They're going to pay it out. It'll be negotiated, and they'll move on.
Less. I mean, they'll negotiate. He'll get a little bit less, but he'll still get it. That's no small chunk of change.
No, it's not.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Even in New York, that's a lot of money.
Maybe not in California, but in New York, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
So I have a fun question for you.
Yeah, this has been making me. I'm looking at the show sheet, and it just says "fun question." And that always scares me.
What is the definition of procrastination?
Oh, Jesus God. We're not going into this.
I just want to know if you know the definition. That wasn't the question, but now that we're talking about it.
Okay, we're done with that. What's your fun question?
Definition is Timothy Carney.
Thank you. Go on. What's your other fun question?
Still haven't gotten me what I needed to get done. What I need to get done. So if you have a procrastinator father like I do, let me know in the comments below, and like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it.
And if you have a pain in the ass child, please put that in the comments because that's what I have.
Yeah. It's not what a pain in the ass is. It's wanting the thing I need to get things done.
What is
you're not
fun,
providing it to
What
me.
is the fun question you want to ask?
So I have, I should say, a golden retriever that you forced upon me that I didn't want.
He loves you.
Before that, it was the second most popular dog in the United States, right?
Yes.
The Labrador Retriever has been, for decades, the most popular dog in the United States. As of 2022, Labrador Retriever has been surpassed as the most owned dog in the United States.
By a dog with a lot of issues.
Do you know who the dog is?
A pocket pooch? The French bulldog? I saw the story.
Well, it's no fun when you see the story before I talk about it.
I didn't know that's what you're going to ask. I saw the story. A French bulldog is a pocket pooch with a lot of health issues.
Yeah, it's definitely an overbred dog. This is no fun.
Sorry.
It was supposed to be a fun question where we had a fun conversation and you guess all these random dogs and then I surprise you by saying, oh, it's a French bulldog.
No.
And you already saw the story.
Well, I've got another question. Fun question for you.
The definition of procrastination
That's not it. It's not it. Kind of is, actually. Kind of is about procrastination. The NFL Hall of Fame is procrastinated on putting some of the greatest players the game has ever known not in their Hall of Fame.
Now, this is a fun story we both looked up and have been talking about all week. So CBS, the NFL, they put a story out, and this was back in 2022. So the number one guy they had on this list has been fixed. But they put out the top 20 NFL players not in the Hall of Fame that should be in the Hall of Fame. And there are a lot of players I didn't realize that weren't in the Hall of Fame that should be. Some of these are a travesty.
I've got my top 2.
And so we are talking about the best players in the NFL not in the Hall of Fame. This isn't a fun question. This is a sad question.
It is a sad question. And
by the way, the French Bulldog is the answer, in case you didn't get that, because he ruined my fun.
So the top 2 players in my world that aren't in the Hall of Fame are Ken Anderson, quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yes.
Super Bowl. Got to the Super Bowl, didn't win, but he got there. And Sterling Sharp, former Green Bay Packer wide receiver, and I'm not being a homer on this. Check the records. Sterling Sharp was that good until an injury ended his career. As his brother said, Shannon is the second best athlete in his family. Sterling Sharp was by far the best.
He played in Green Bay before national television was really a thing with the NFL.
Well, before the
market really
before the Packers really had made it back to greatness and were on national TV.
He got hurt the year before they went to the Super Bowl.
Correct. And holds a ton of Packer records. By far the greatest athlete to ever play wide receiver up until maybe Devontae Adams.
In Green Bay.
He
was the Calvin Johnson of his time.
He was.
And nobody could he just threw the ball up and he just caught it. He would have broken every Packer record.
He would have broke down Hudson's record.
Oh, in 2 more seasons. He's a lot like Larry Fitzgerald to me, because Larry Fitzgerald is the greatest wide receiver of all time. Period.
Better than Jerry Rice?
Hands down. It's not even close. Look at what Larry Fitzgerald did with bad quarterback play. He never played with a good quarterback.
Do not say it.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say the only time he even had decent quarterback
was when Kurt Warner was
and
there.
Look what he did that season.
Yes, he blew up.
Kurt Warner.
He blew up.
And Kurt Warner's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Good quarterback. So look what he did with a good quarterback play. I mean, he just had nobody and is the second in receiving yard. I mean, he's second in everything to Jerry Rice, who had the benefit of playing with back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Well, could you imagine
put Jerry Rice in those situations that Larry Fitzgerald was in, and we're not talking about Jerry Rice the same way.
Just imagine Larry Fitzgerald in New England.
Put him in New England. Put him in Green Bay, where he would have went from Favre to Rodgers in the same way that Jerry Rice went from Montana to Young.
It would have been nuts.
So, yes, Larry Fitzgerald is the greatest receiver of all time. Jerry Rice is too. And there's no question about it.
Sterling Sharp is in that conversation because he was that kind of all-time great for not a long enough period of time because of injury. Belongs in the Hall of Fame.
100% belongs in the Hall of Fame. There's a couple more receivers that are there. One that surprises me. So number 1 on this list was Zach Thomas, linebacker from the Dolphins for many years. Played 1 year for the Cowboys. He got put in this year. So he just got put into the Hall of Fame. He'll do his speech this year, which is good that that's been fixed. Torrey Holt is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
See, I would have thought he would have been in years ago.
I don't understand how he's not. Either is Isaac Bruce.
That's just wrong.
Neither one of the players that were on the greatest show on turf, the ones that made that work, because it wasn't Kurt Warner, are not in the Hall of Fame.
Was Kurt Warner, but he had to throw it to somebody.
He threw it up. It was like watching Terry Bradshaw throw it up to Lynn Swann.
And John Stallworth.
And John
both
Stallworth.
Of all, who are in the Hall of Fame.
They are. So how are you not putting Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt in the Hall of Fame? I don't understand.
There's something weird about the Hall of Fame and wide receivers.
It took Tim Brown forever to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I don't. Both of them should be in the Hall of Fame.
They should go in the same year.
They really should.
Oh, is that my voice? Huh?
Ken Anderson is not in the Hall of Fame.
He belongs. He was an outstanding quarterback in the late 70s, early 80s. He is Bill Walsh's first West Coast offense quarterback.
Correct, because he was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals.
Yes. He invented the West Coast offense while he
went to a Super Bowl.
Went to a Super Bowl, lost to the 49ers.
Correct.
Absolutely needs to be in there. Bad mustache. But number 14.
Everybody back then had a bad mustache. Reggie Wayne is not in the Hall of Fame yet, which is a joke. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And this isn't including, by the way, I know Adrian Peterson's not in the Hall of Fame. He's not eligible for the Hall of Fame yet.
He will be.
There's a lot of those guys that aren't eligible. I'm not talking about them. These are guys that have been eligible and are not. This guy, I'm going to save him because there is one guy on here that the fact that he is not in the Hall of Fame, it shocked me.
Okay.
I didn't know he wasn't in the Hall of Fame, and I don't know how he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
It absolutely shocks me. Clay Matthews is in the Hall of Fame. Clay's dad, he is in the Hall of Fame. He's on this list.
Bruce Matthews.
Here's another one I didn't realize. L.C. Greenwood is not in the Hall of Fame.
That's a travesty. Iron Curtain, the anchor of the Iron Curtain.
So was Clay Matthews was in there too. L.C. Greenwood, and
do you think Clay Matthews is even going to get in?
He'll get in the same year my Clay Matthews gets in.
You're talking about Bruce Matthews.
Bruce Matthews is in.
Bruce is in.
Clay Matthews Bruce's
Sr.
brother,
got it,
is not in. Clay Matthews Jr. is not in. I could see Clay Matthews Sr. and Jr. going in the same year.
I'm not sure either one ever get in.
Clay Matthews, if you were the greatest player at your position for 5 years or more, you are a Hall of Famer. Clay Matthews Jr. at least was the greatest player at his position for 5+ years. Clay Matthews Sr., the only reason he isn't talked about in the same way is because Kevin Green was on that same team.
Correct. And Kevin Green's in the Hall of Fame now.
He is. This is another one I was shocked. Still not the one I'm talking about. Jim Marshall.
Really?
Is not
from the Purple People
in
Eaters.
The Hall of Fame.
Ron Way, Jim Marshall. Should be in the Hall of Fame.
How is Jim Marshall? His number's retired in Minnesota.
Not only probably one of the smartest men ever play. I don't know. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, talk about one of the greatest defensive ends of all time. Again, a guy that was overshadowed at his position because Deacon Jones was so good at that time.
But the Purple People Eaters is like the Iron Curtain. All of them should be in.
Right. I don't know how Jim Marshall was the Purple People Eater. He was the one that really led that defense.
Him and Ellen Page.
That's fair. You did have Page there. But Jim Marshall is one I always think of. It's the one that gets talked about a lot. I couldn't believe he was not in the Hall of Fame. Before I get into this next one, that is the most ridiculous person to ever be left out of the Hall of Fame. More than Sterling Sharp. More than Patrick Willis, who should be in the Hall of Fame, but he ended his career too soon. More than Clay Matthews Sr. or Jr. More than even Ken Stabler, in my opinion.
Ken Stabler's in the Hall of Fame.
Not Ken Stabler. Ken Anderson. Wrong Ken. Too many Kens. More than L.C. Greenwood being left out. Do you have anybody else that you think should be in the Hall of Fame? Steve Tasker's not in the Hall of Fame either, by the way. He's on this list. I don't agree with that.
He's one of my most underrated players of all time.
He was on your
list. Going back to a previous show. Not in the Hall of Fame. Not Tony Romo.
You might as well put Tony Romo in.
Stop. I got nothing. Who?
Roger Craig.
What?
Is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's not true.
Roger Craig is not in the Pro
He won
Football
4.
Hall of Fame.
He was the running back for 4 Super Bowl teams.
Roger Craig is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Then until he's in, that may be the Hall of Shame. He's up there with
Running
Sterling
back for the
and Ken
Niners
Anderson.
from 83 to 90.
Yeah.
With the Raiders in 91 and with the Vikings in 92 and 93. He won 4 Super Bowls.
Wow.
Well, 3 Super Bowls, right?
No, he won.
No, he won 4.
4. He won 3 with Walsh and 1 with Seifert.
How is Roger Craig not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I've got nothing on that. I mean, that's almost as bad as Ron Santo not being in the Baseball Hall of Fame all those years. He may be ahead of my 2, Sharp and Anderson.
I mean, here's the issue too. He was the Hall of Fame's all-decade team for the 1980s. Again, Ron Santo, right?
Santo.
Ron Santo is the Hall of Fame's all-decade team for the 60s at third base.
Ahead of Brooks Robinson.
Ahead of Brooks Robinson.
Right. And Roger Craig's not in the Hall of Fame. That's
Super Bowl champion, 4-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro, 1988 Offensive Player of the Year, and member of the Hall of Fame's all-decade team for the 1980s.
like Jerry Kramer.
And he is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
He's the new Jerry Kramer. He's got to go in. That's got to be corrected immediately.
That is the best player not in the Hall of Fame in the NFL right now, period.
I thought he was in. I'm
I
done.
was shocked when I saw this list, and they only have him listed as number 6.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Behind Sterling Sharp, Reggie Wayne, Ken Anderson, Torrey Holt, and Zach Thomas.
No.
Now, I agree with Zach Thomas being number 1 on that list because he needed to be in the Hall of Fame, but he's been fixed. He's in the Hall of Fame, which makes Roger Craig the number 1 best player not in the Hall of Fame. You want to talk about your new Jerry Kramer? That's your new Jerry Kramer.
He needs to be in immediately because he's earned it.
How is he not a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I got nothing.
In a West Coast offense, he was the first running back to roll out and catch the ball.
And he was outstanding at it. Look at how many times, I mean, he destroyed other teams.
Absolutely destroyed over other teams. If you let him go, he took over the game.
You couldn't stop him. Because as soon as you stopped him running, he'd catch a ball and go for a 15-yard reception.
Right. He'd roll out, and you had to honor Jerry Rice. You had to honor, who's the tight end? Clark.
Dwight Clark.
Dwight Clark. You had to make sure you had people on him. Nobody really saw running backs roll out at that point. He was small for his position.
But he played big.
I mean, that was in a time frame when you had giant backs like Earl Campbell. You had giant backs like, who was the guy that was with the Cowboys? Herschel Walker. I mean, you had massive.
It was before the Emmitt Smiths of the world. But
even Emmitt Smith was a guy who would plow you over. I mean, you had Sweetness back then.
But he was a Sweetness and Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, for those who don't know who Sweetness is, those guys were running backs. They didn't catch a lot out of the backfield.
That's what I'm saying. They were not the same way. Roger Craig was the first true. It's what we see in running backs today.
Correct. You have to be able to, Aaron Jones from the Packers, pick your poison for whatever team. If you don't catch out of the backfield, you're not a starting running back in the NFL.
What's his name for the Niners now is a prime example. I would say considering he plays for the Niners now, I would say they're very similar players. McCaffrey.
Yes.
For the 49ers. But Roger Craig not being in the Hall of Fame, that is the number 1.
So that will be
not in the Hall of Fame.
That will be on I will hashtag or at Roger Craig on our Twitter when we should send this out.
In the way the Packer fans always united to get Jerry Kramer in the Hall of Fame.
And we did.
We all need to make sure we're sending in letters every single day to make sure Roger Craig gets in the Hall of Fame.
Just so you know.
And get Kurt Warner out of the Hall of
Fame. My letter about Jerry Kramer one year was the lead letter that was used to try to get him in. I got contacted by the family and said, hey, we want to use your letter as our
How have I never heard this story?
I told you about it. I still have a letter someplace. I wrote a letter to the family and stating all the reasons Kramer should have been put in the Hall of Fame. And they used it as the lead letter to the committee that year. I was very proud.
You should be. I met
proud
Jerry
of
Kramer once.
Yeah, that was at William Henderson's Hall of Fame night.
It's honestly one of the greatest moments of my life. Didn't say 2 words to me.
Until?
Never said anything. He said something to you.
Yes.
Never said 2 words for me. I wasn't expecting an autograph. There were some autograph hounds out there after the game. I didn't want his autograph.
No,
I just wanted to meet him and shake his hand.
Right.
And I looked at him and I said, Mr. Kramer, it's an honor to meet you. You are the heart and soul of the Green Bay Packers sweep. Thank you for everything you did for the Packer organization. And just held my hand out to shake his hand. And needless to say, he had a few drinks at that point.
It was late in the night.
It was late in the night. But he just stared at me for a second with the most intense stare I've gotten.
I remember that
I didn't know what was about to happen. I was like 18, 19 at the time. I was either going to get my hand shaken or be punched in the face. Both were on the table.
He looked at me then and said, "This is a good kid."
Yeah, after I had walked away.
Yeah.
He put out his hand and shook his hand. Pause. That man used his hands well in the NFL. I think his hand was a callus. The whole thing.
It was just
a
gnarly,
massive individual. You want to see an NFL athlete in his old age. And one of the nicest guys just really grabbed something for me and signed it for me. I still have his autograph in storage someplace. I need to get it and put it up.
And yours is the only one he signed, by the way.
He did not sign anybody else. He only signed something for me. I don't even want an autograph. I really didn't. I just wanted to meet the guy.
Well, and that's kind of the way I've always been, and I raised you that way. These guys, just thank them for what they've done. You don't need an autograph. They just appreciate the talent they had.
It's fun to have an autograph of a player. To me, the memory of meeting the player, it's not for anybody else.
Right.
That's why I always loved what Bart Starr did, because this is for me to meet somebody that I thought was amazing. That's why Bart Starr's autograph, we have one of the only Bart Starr autographs, very rare one where he didn't personalize it to somebody. I still don't know how you found that, but we have it.
So it was a last minute thing. I was with your brother. We had an old football. I mean, it's not even an NFL football. And we were just there, and you were in the hospital.
Yeah.
It was back during that time.
Got it.
And Ryan said to him, "I want to take this to my brother." And he signed it, and he just put 15 on it.
Which is so weird.
Yeah.
Bart Starr, for those of you that don't know why Bart Starr is such a rare autograph to just have a signature from it, Bart Starr always wrote to whoever it was for. And even if it was an autographed hound that said, "No, just sign it for me," he'd write to whom it may concern or whatever it was. He wrote it to somebody. He always personalized, which I think is the greatest thing, and I think should be a lesson to a lot of players.
He didn't want autograph hounds selling his stuff.
He didn't. This is to somebody, and this means more when you write to. And I'm a big believer in that as well, because this isn't to be sold. This isn't to ever go anywhere. This is for my personal collection.
Yeah, you're never going to get rid of that ball, no matter what it's worth.
I'm not getting rid of the Jerry Kramer autograph. I mean, you can't take the memory away.
Right.
That's for sure. It's there forever. But hey, it is time. We have had a great show. Roger Craig, you found 2 Packer fans that are 100% on your side, and apologize for not knowing that you were not in the Hall of Fame. You are so great. We assumed you were in the Hall of Fame. We're going to work hard on this show to get that corrected. But it is that time, because the dad always gets the last word. It is all you.
So, did you see I don't know, I send you a lot of stuff late at night, and this was
I don't read any of it. It's the TLDR, too long didn't read. It should stand for too late didn't read.
Got it. I sent you a picture of Phil Mickelson.
Holy buckets,
did you see
did.
That? He looks like a cancer patient. He looks so old. Dude has taken, obviously...
I'm going to put this up here. You can see right now what he looks like now versus what he had looked like just a couple years ago.
Dude has obviously taken a beating over going to live, turning his back on the USGA and his legacy in general. I think he's spelling it Regret. I don't think he's happy about the decision. Made a lot of money with it.
He looks like a president after he served 48 or 2 terms.
He looks
looks tough, man. This has clearly beat him up. He may have went to live, but he barely looks alive. That was awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
I want credit for that.
Well played. But I honestly think Liv is on its last legs, because the PGA Tour is making their changes, and Tiger and Rory are going to be taking it to the next level. I don't know if those players... I watched an interview with Jack Nicklaus. He was on Nick Haldo's podcast. And he said, most of these guys that are going to live were European players who didn't come up through the USGA and all their championships. Mickelson did.
He did.
He should know the history, and he should know what the PGA Tour, and good for Fred Couples, by the way, for calling him out and calling Sergio out. But you're turning your back on something that made you millionaires and made you famous.
No, listen, I don't have any issues with Phil taking the money. I don't. $250 million.
I don't have a problem with that.
Money for several generations.
But you don't start ripping that which has built you.
That's where he sold his soul.
Yes.
Because you obviously know that was part of the deal.
Yeah.
That's where he sold his soul.
And it's hurt him. He hasn't been at the Masters, which has to kill him. The Masters is everything to those players.
I don't think he'll ever be in that. What's the thing they do in the Masters?
Oh, the honorary first tee?
Yeah. That'll be Rory and Tiger.
That will crush Phil to not be one of those starters. And I'm not sure he thought about all that.
No, it'll be Fred Couples will be one of them. Yep. You'll have Steve Stricker could be on that list.
No, Stricker never won the Masters.
Oh, he didn't?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, Stricker never won a major. Although he's a Ryder Cup winning champion, so he should be allowed in some of these events.
Steve Stricker in Wisconsin is like the Milwaukee Brewers. He's never really won anything.
No.
But people talk about him like he's won everything.
Steve has won. He won the Ryder Cup. You're right, though. Andy North, who won 2 U.S. Opens, is kind of an afterthought. Everybody loves Steve Stricker.
It's like the Milwaukee Brewers. Like they've never won anything, but they're celebrated like they have.
Leave them alone.
No, nothing wrong. It's just a funny statement on people from Wisconsin.
Between Stricker and Jerry Kelly, they're just two lovable guys.
They are. But yeah, he will not be a part of the honorary tee-off. He has a lot of crow to eat. He needs to do a lot of work, and he may get to that point when he's much, much older just to let things go.
He's got the way he looks now, I hope he gets to that point. He looks rough.
He looks rough. Phil, best of luck. You did it to yourself.
You did.
I mean, I don't feel bad for you, but it obviously is hurting him quite a bit. And that's a hard place to be in. We all live with regrets on one thing or another. We don't all live with regrets like he is having. And I'm not intentionally saying live the way that I am, but it's cool how that's working out. And it sucks to have that moment where you can't get over this. You've made a lifelong mistake.
And I think he has. More so than Sergio and the other players.
Different ball game.
Phil was, to Arnie and Jack, there was Phil and Tiger.
Correct.
And
that's what it was going to be.
And that's already gone.
It will not be Phil included with that. It'll just be Tiger.
Correct.
And that's too bad. Well, hey, thank you guys always is so much for watching. We can't thank you enough for every single week tuning in with us and enjoying this show.
Before we end the show, 8,500 subscribers and growing. So thank you very much for that.
I was getting there.
Sorry.
And you interrupted my flow. But he already mentioned it. Thank you so much for subscribing, and please continue to watch this show with us and leave your comments below if you want us to talk about anything special. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Sports Talk with Dad.
Bye, everybody.